Everybody on page 32 now? All right, all the organs are there on the left side, and we'll pretty much go down here in order. But in parentheses, you got to pay attention to the fact that there are different epithelial linings along the way. The best way to learn this is as a tracing. Imagine yourself an oxygen molecule, and you are traveling from the outside room air all the way to the alveoli where gas exchange happens. Everybody got it?
Yeah.
The epithelial lining along the ways that's on page 32 is actually quite easy if you understand three things. You guys ready? First, wear and tear tissue is stratified squamous. Okay. Second, the predominant tissue lining of the respiratory tract is that guy, pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Third, we got to get to this because this is the tissue of gas exchange. Everybody got it?
Mm-hmm.
You get those three things, it's not that difficult. Okay, let's go ahead and start tracing our way through as an oxygen molecule all the way to the alveoli. The air molecule has to go through the nostril. That is stratified squamous keratinized. Just like skin. It's the same as skin. Then, for about as far as you can stick your finger, it transitions into non-keratinized stratified squamous, but it's still wear and tear, and that's in the nasal vestibule. That's the orange arrow. So for the first part of this tracing, the color arrows are the same. Green will be nostril, orange will be nasal vestibule. Both have stratified squamous. You gotta have wear and tear tissue because you know, you guys love to pick your nose. But then as soon as you get past where you can stick your finger, it transitions into the predominant tissue lining, pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. You will sometimes see the word respiratory epithelium when it comes to this. But already, nasal cavity. Past where you can stick your finger, you don't need wear and tear tissue lining, so you're going to go to the predominant tissue lining, respiratory epithelium. Now the lateral walls of the nasal cavity has the conchas, superior, middle, and inferior. Those are the three red arrows. Everybody can identify which one is which,
Mm-hmm.
right? Somebody in Monday Lab was observant enough to say, hey, you never said nasal septum.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say nasal septum today. Cross the damn thing off. Since you have lecture exam 3, I'll let it slide that you're kind of brain dead. All right, there are 4 paranasal sinuses. I will only ask these 2.
Okay.
And the one on the left in yellow is the frontal sinus. The one on the right is the sphenoidal sinus. I will not ask you maxillary or ethmoidal, even though they are part of it. I just don't have any models that show it.
Okay, cool.
Is everybody crossing things off?
Yep. Frontal and sphenoidal.
Okay, everybody got it? All right, dark blue arrow is the internal nares, or choani. It's a little bit trickier this time because instead of seeing it on the skull, this has got tissue over it, isn't it? But here's where you could discern this. This is the palatine process of the maxilla. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
And then you got the palatine process of the palatine bone in the back. And it ends right here. The end of the hard palate is the choanine.
Okay.
Right there. Everybody got it? The end of the hard palate is the choanine.
Internal nares for the full point?
Yeah, you could be either choanine or internal nares.
Okay.
Get your lab exam. All right, I will just give you this. If you're interested, you could write it down. If you're not interested, don't write it down. But it's a way of understanding it. And if you understand it, what?
You don't need to.
You don't need to memorize it. The hard palate separates the oral cavity from the nasal cavity.
Okay.
The hard palate separates the oral cavity from the nasal cavity. But since the choanine is the line between nasal cavity and nasal pharynx, the soft palate separates the oral cavity from the nasal pharynx.
Can you repeat the soft palate?
Soft palate separates oral cavity from nasopharynx, and you can see the spelling right there from the top line of pharynx.
Thanks.
Everybody say that, pharynx.
Pharynx.
That's throat. Pharynx is throat, and there's 3 subregions. And the subregions are named for what's anterior to it. So here's the 3 subregions. Anterior to this is the nasal cavity, so that's the nasopharynx. And you can see the soft palate separates the oral cavity from the nasopharynx. Anterior to this is the oral cavity, so this is the oropharynx. Anterior to this is the opening to the larynx, so this is the laryngopharynx. You see those terms there on page 32.
Yes.
Nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryngopharynx. Those are the 3 subregions of the throat. Okay. Now, this is where if you took down the 3 things you got to know about epithelial linings along the way, this is really easy. This is wear and tear. This is the predominant tissue lining, but you got to get down to this because this is the tissue of gas exchange.
Okay.
Everybody got that?
Mhm.
Well, you don't need wear and tear up in the nasopharynx. Shouldn't be anything up there except for air. Unless you're drinking milk and someone makes you laugh. But say you were eating lunch and you're running late for lab and you had a handful of Doritos. And you said, oh shoot, I don't want to eat in lab and crunch. So you just shove a whole bunch of Doritos in your mouth and you walk in the door. And you swallow it before you've chewed it all. Those Doritos are scraping.
Oh.
You need wear and tear tissue where the Doritos are scraping. Are you
Mhm.
following the mentality here?
Yeah.
Well, there are no Doritos up here, but there is here and here, because those 2 regions of the throat are shared by the respiratory system and the digestive system. So you, oh, excuse me, sorry. That should have been here.
For real.
And where the Doritos are rubbing, that's here.
Did he say that? Did he say that? So that we're gonna get tested on that? Oh.
Okay, everybody got it?
Yeah. Okay.
You can check page 32 to see if I'm lying to you or not. All right, let's look at more details in the nasopharynx. So this is nasopharynx in light blue. On the lateral wall, you have the opening to the auditory tube. That's in green. The This is why your tympanic cavity is open to your nasopharynx. On the posterior superior roof, you have the pharyngeal tonsil in red. When it's inflamed, we call it adenoids. Sometimes you'll see it, or hear it be called adenoids, not all the time. But again, separating this nasopharynx from the oral cavity is the soft palate in white. And on the midline of the soft palate, you have the uvula, and you need that to seal off the nasopharynx when you swallow.
What is that on here?
Uvula is yellow.
Thank you.
Dangles from the midline of the soft palate, and you need that to seal off the nasopharynx when you swallow. If you don't have that, you can't seal it off, and you swallow, things are going to go up into your nose.
Makes sense.
Everybody got these? Everybody got these?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to the oral pharynx. That's this. This is where the other 4 tonsils are. Remember, tonsils are just malt. They're just the first ones, so they're kind of big. On the lateral wall here are the palatine tonsils. They are actually located on the border between oral cavity and oral pharynx. It's referred to as the fauces. On the base of the tongue are the lingual tonsils in green. And that's all you got in the oral pharynx.
Would we be just calling it tonsil? Lingual tonsil?
No, you have to call them lingual tonsils in green, palatine tonsils in yellow. Previous slide was the pharyngeal tonsil in red.
So there's an S.
So far, so good? The laryngopharynx, everybody look at me. I want to ask this question in lecture later.
Mm.
And I'm going to see how many people were able to listen after lecture exam 3. The laryngopharynx is the fork in the road. The laryngopharynx is the fork in the road because it still is part of both digestive system and respiratory. If you take the anterior fork, you're in the respiratory system going into the larynx in red. If you take the posterior fork, you're heading into this tube called the esophagus. That's in blue. And that tube ends up in the stomach. The laryngopharynx is the fork in the road.
Is it just a two-way fork? Like it can only go to the
Yep.
larynx and the esophagus?
Yep, just a two-way single fork in the road. Anterior fork, posterior fork. Larynx or esophagus. Everybody got it?
Yeah.
So this is on the
Sounds
chair,
messy.
and we have a mid-sagittal head, so we have the same color arrows. Let me know if you need for me to fill in all those arrows. It's the same color as the other mid-sagittal head.
This is over.
What's that?
Over.
Nostril, green. Nasal vestibule, orange. The 3 nasal conchas in red, superior, middle, and inferior. Frontal sinus, right yellow arrow. Sphenoidal sinus, the straight down yellow arrow. Choanine in dark blue. 4, 5, and 6 are the 3 subregions of the pharynx.
Thank you.
I can't spell Koani to say well. Internal
Is
medicine.
Korean without me?
What's that?
Korean without me?
It doesn't matter because in these mid-sagittal heads, it's not really showing you both of them, but you actually have 2 choanine, one on the left and one on the right.
So I spell it without it.
Either way.
Maybe
go with internal nair. I get that wrong.
Everybody got these? Everybody got these colors?
Yes.
Okay, because we got another mid-sagittal head up there on the top right.
Oh,
Same color arrows. Do I have to go with these?
no. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
I got all the Scantrons graded and all but 4 of the Tuesday's blue books
Oh my gosh.
already graded. So my goal is to have these things posted before I leave today.
Wow.
That's the
Or,
fastest.
because I didn't take up his whole hour.
Well, tomorrow being the drop deadline. Okay, everybody got these? So it'd be really great if you guys were very gentle with me today and kept up so we can get out of here so I can get back to grading. How's that sound?
We're gonna bathe you all the
Okay,
way.
you gonna be helpful?
Yes.
So like this, right here?
Yeah, we can fill it in ourselves.
That doesn't help. If you feel like this.
I'm on a bunch of drugs.
Wait, I missed that. Can you go over those arrows again? Yeah, that's not gonna help. Everybody got it? So try to stay up. All right, now this is the heart-lung. Heart-lung model, I think it's on the middle shelf of the cart. On the very top is a larynx. Everybody say that, larynx.
Larynx.
Larynx is a voice box. Pharynx is a throat. The larynx has 3 major cartilages and they're singular. The largest is the thyroid cartilage, and that answer must have both words, thyroid cartilage. Last lab exam we had thyroid gland. So if you just say thyroid, I don't know which one you're talking about. Thyroid cartilage.
No,
It's stiff hyaline cartilage. By the way, you remember how this thyroid gland is bow tie, like a bow tie shape?
yeah.
It goes right here.
Thyroid cartilage. Oh. He was saying the last time we had thyroid gland.
That's why they're named that. Even though it's the largest one, it does not go all the way around 360 degrees. The only one that does is this one. Underneath it is the cricoid cartilage.
Cricoid?
Cricoid
Okay.
cartilage. It is a complete ring, the only complete ring out of all of them.
And we have to say cartilage.
Yes, cricoid cartilage. Here in this mid-sagittal plane, you can see it's only the red cricoid cartilage that goes all the way around. Yes?
What view would you ask for? Would you hand this close to
Anyone that you see here. Which is why I teach lab with these pictures, with the very models I use. No mystery. If you see it on a slide, that's possible. Okay? And probably where the arrowheads are is where the pin's going. The last major cartilage, you only need one word, and that's epiglottis. The other 2 are hyaline cartilage and stiff. Epiglottis is floppy, and it flops over the opening to the larynx when you swallow. Now the entire larynx, except for 2 little strips, has gone right back to pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium, because that should be nothing but air going through the larynx. Okay, in purple, pay attention now. In purple are the vestibular ligament or false vocal cords. Those are your 2 options for the full point. Vestibular ligament or false vocal cords. I can see it superior. I want you to know that no sound comes from these. False vocal cords or vestibular ligament. Everybody got it? In gold, those are the vocal ligaments or true vocal cords. Those are your only 2 options for the full point.
Okay.
Cords. one on the left and one on the right. This is the only spot in the larynx that has wear and tear tissue, stratified squamous. Because if you're hearing my voice right now, that's because my true vocal cords are slapping against one another. And when they're slapping against one another, you need wear and tear tissue. Everybody got it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody got these?
Yes.
All right, there's two large larynx on top of the cart, one without muscles, this one, and one with muscles.
Okay.
Here's the three major cartilages. Green is thyroid cartilage, red is cricoid cartilage, yellow is epiglottis. If you accidentally inhale food, it's going to most likely get stuck where you have the complete ring, the cricoid cartilage. Because island cartilage is stiff, and that's the only one that's a complete 360-degree ring. Everybody got it? Then what do you need if something like that happens? Well, let me ask you this. If food gets lodged on the cricoid cartilage, what sound do you make?
Choke.
You need the Heimlich? with
No,
that?
you make this sound.
Nothing at all?
No air.
Except you don't look like that. You look like this, but you sound the same. You look like this. When something's stuck in the cricoid cartilage, you can't move air. And if you can't move air, you make no sound.
Mm.
Then what do you need?
Heimlich.
Then you need the Heimlich. You've got to blow it out off the cricoid cartilage. Everybody got it?
Yeah.
All right, from the lateral side, you can see the same major cartilages. You can see that the thyroid cartilage does not go all the way around, even though it's largest. Only the cricoid goes all the way around. From the posterior, so on this slide right posterior, you can see the thyroid cartilage is wide open.
Yeah.
And here we can see the minor cartilages, which are paired. There's three pairs. Light blue are the right and left arytenoid cartilages. They rotate, and when they rotate, they alter the tension on the true vocal cords, which is the difference between this and this. Sitting on top of the arytenoid cartilages are the corniculate cartilages. And that's in dark blue.
Do we have to say cartilage up here?
Yes.
So if this is the posterior side, are you gonna ask us which one's right and left of them? And is it our right or our left? Our right or,
Left is left.
like, is it flipped like the
Yeah,
heart?
this is posterior, so right is right and left is left.
Okay.
Okay. So these are the major cartilages, even though they're kind of out of focus. This is a close-up of the minor cartilages. Arytenoid in light blue, corniculate in dark blue. The cuneiforms are on top of the corniculate cartilages, and I don't have any models that show it.
Cool.
I don't have any models of cuneiform cartilages. Man, we're crossing stuff off left and right here, huh?
Keep it coming.
All right. Thyroid cartilage is up on top, cricoid cartilage is on the bottom. There's the minor cartilages, same color arrows.
Okay.
In this model, the two gold arrows are the two true vocal cords that slap together. The opening between the two vocal cords in dark green is the glottis. It is the gap between the true vocal cords. It is what the epiglottis is covering when you swallow.
How would you pin that?
Good question. I would have the pin floating in midair. I would pin a true vocal cord and I would say, what is the structure? True vocal cord. Or I will ask, what is the name of the space next to this pin?
Thank you.
Here's the large larynx up on top of the cart-width muscles. Same color arrows for the major cartilages. Do I need to go over these?
No.
I might actually get those graded. From the posterior or on top, we can actually see the minor cartilages.
Okay.
This is the muscle. There are actually several muscles that rotate the arytenoid cartilage, but this is the main one. People who are able to carry a tune when they sing have good control of that muscle.
Not me.
Again, the gold arrows are the true vocal cords, and the dark green arrow is the glottis. Everybody got it?
Yes.
All right, now we're going down the trachea. The tracheal cartilages do not go all the way around. They are horseshoe shaped as well. You don't ever have to say C or Y shape, just call it tracheal cartilage. But where you read it where it says C or Y, that's because this top blue arrow, if I take out that tracheal cartilage, and I can hold it like this. Everybody understand that? But then this guy here, when it splits, is like a sideways Y. That's why they call them C or Y shape. But they do not go all the way around. The only one that goes all the way around is the cricoid cartilage. These on the posterior has a sheet of smooth muscle we call the trachealis.
Okay.
The sheet of smooth muscle, trachealis. Okay, now before I get into the bronchial tree, let's go down to the second to the bottom section on lungs. Is everybody there?
Mm-hmm.
You see where it says 5 lobes?
Yes.
You better write next to it. You have to name them. You have to name the 5 lobes, and they're really easy.
Cool.
You guys ready?
Yes.
Notice how the lungs are not symmetrical. The right lung is bigger, that's why you have 3 lobes. The left lung is smaller, you only have 2 lobes. And the 2 lobes are superior lobe and inferior lobe of the left lung.
Okay.
Because the right lung is bigger, there's 3 lobes. Superior, middle, and inferior lobe of the right lung.
Okay, great.
You guys can name these, right?
Yes.
Say just like that. Superior lobe of the right lung. Middle lobe of the right lung. Inferior lobe of the left lung. Why are the lungs asymmetrical?
Because of the heart.
Because the heart leans to the left and takes volume out of the left lung. Where the heart takes volume out of the left lung, that's called the cardiac notch. That's the yellow arrow.
Middle. I'll confirm.
Down there on the very bottom, and also when you take off the anterior half of the lungs, the manufacturer put little seam lines to separate the lobes. Everybody see the seam lines?
Yes.
Which, by the way, is very realistic. In the cadaver, you do not have to dissect the lobes out. They are actually separate.
Really?
There's a seam line between. Yeah. Okay, on the very bottom where it says muscles, you know, we already did intercostal muscles and scalenes on lab exam 2. The only one I'll probably ask is the diaphragm.
Okay.
That's on the very bottom. You can cross off intercostal muscles and scalenes. That's lab exam 2.
Oh,
You know, I'm crossing off you guys.
this is so nice.
Okay, I'll only cross those off if you can answer this. What is that guy right there?
Cephalic trunk.
Descending thoracic aorta.
I'm talking about that little hole.
Oh,
The cephalic trunk.
Superior mesenteric?
What's that?
Cephalic trunk,
oh, the carotid sinus?
right?
Mary was close. What wrong?
What'd she say? Well, it's red.
That's the abdominal, descending abdominal aorta, yeah. Right as soon as it peeks through the diaphragm, you see it is a trunk. It's not cephalic trunk.
Celiac trunk.
Celiac trunk. Celiac trunk, 'cause remember how there's 5 arteries that come off the descending abdominal aorta? 5 types of arteries? And I said the very first one, as soon as the aorta springs out from underneath the diaphragm, boom, there it is. That's how close it is. Okay?
Dang.
I guess I won't ask the other muscles. All right, the reason why I wanted to go over the lungs first is because of this. Now we're gonna do the bronchial tree. Take a look at this picture. Flip it upside down. Would that not look like a tree?
Yes.
The bronchial tree is an upside down tree. The trunk is the trachea in red. The trachea ends where it splits. And the spot where it splits in purple is called the carina. And yes, I can ask that because on bronchi, bronchial tree, it says in parentheses, begins at carina. It's on page 32.
Where does it split? Okay, so carnia. Mm. Okay. What do you have now? What do you have for that? Carnia?
That's a name.
Carina, right?
Some girls are named Carina, huh?
So carina is pink or purple, whatever?
Purple. It's where the trachea splits.
And it goes to the trachea.
Right. Are we ready? This is why I did the lungs first. Primary bronchi go to lungs. Since you only have one right lung, you only have one right primary bronchus. Replace the I with a US. Bronchus. Since you only have one left lung, number 20 is the left primary bronchus. Trachea.
So is it bronchial-US? B-R-O-N-C-H-I-O-L-U-S?
Primary, secondary, tertiary bronchi. Primary bronchi go to lungs. Secondary bronchi go to lobes, which is why you have 5 of them.
Okay.
3 on the right, 2 on the left.
Same as the ones before.
What's that?
Same as the ones before. Superior, middle, inferior.
Yeah, you don't have to name the secondary bronchi, you just have to name the lobes.
Okay.
Everybody got it? Tertiary bronchi in green go to segments. And so these are also referred to as segmental bronchi. Primary go to lungs, secondary go to lobes, tertiary go to segments. And all are coated with pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Do you see how that is the predominant tissue lining of the respiratory tract? Everybody see that? Yes?
She's I'm not seeing anything.
Well, I can only pin one, so you better change all of them to Broncos. I can only pin one with one pin. Change all of them to Broncos. You guys got a question?
What's green?
Tertiary bronchi.
I was trying to show her on the paper. It's kind of hidden, it's not in the main
I
tab.
know, you have to look for it.
This is like a word puzzle.
But change bronchi to Broncos, because I can only pin one with one pin.
Broncos.
Broncos, change the I to US. All right, on this one on the chair, they only do this on the left side. Same color arrows.
Okay. So, the green is tertiary.
Okay?
Same color arrows, okay.
Any questions? Everybody got these? All right, this is the bronchial tree that's up on top of the cartoo. It has a larynx on top. Red is trachea, purple is carina. Yellow is the right and left primary bronchi going to lungs. Blue are the secondary bronchi going to lobes. 3 on the right, 2 on the left. Green is going to segments. On this model, they actually color-code the segments.
Huh.
At UCLA, we actually had to know the names of the segments.
So these segments are not tertiary.
And one of my classmates said something I was thinking, and that is,
No.
I want to drill on teeth. Why do I have to learn the name of lung segments?
Oh, because there's, okay.
And the answer scared us all.
Do most people die in the dental chair from breathing complications?
No.
Oh.
He says, I don't give a big goddamn if you don't want to learn this.
Oh.
You want to be called doctor when you graduate? You're going to learn it.
Oh.
Okay. We'll learn it. Everybody got us? Any questions?
Okay.
This is close to the same thing. Again, all of these would be lined with pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium.
Okay.
Now let's get into the bronchioles. There are 3 levels of bronchioles, and it does. You better read it carefully. 3 levels. They are single word bronchioles, then 2 words terminal bronchioles, and then 2 words respiratory bronchioles. There's 3 levels of bronchioles. Here on this thing on the chair down at the bottom are the last 2. Terminal bronchioles in red, respiratory bronchioles in blue. The reason why we call those respiratory bronchioles in blue is because it has single alveoli on them. So there's gas exchange happening right there.
And we can do the IALS on this?
I-A-L-S.
That's a yes. That's a no.
IOLES.
Well, if it's 1, you better not have the S. Respiratory bronchiole.
Okay.
Okay, the best way to think about alveoli is this. They look like grapes, and when they come on in clumps, it looks like a clump of grapes. Everybody got it?
Mm-hmm.
When it's a clump of grapes, like in yellow, it's an alveolar sac. Alveolar sac is a clump of grapes, and alveolus, again, change the I to US, is 1 grape. Alveolus is 1 grape. A whole clump of grapes is an alveolar sac.
Okay.
Green arrows are on alveoli. Yellow arrow is on an alveolar sac.
Got it.
This is on top of the cart here, and it shows all 3 levels of bronchioles. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yellow is single word bronchial. Red is terminal bronchioles. Blue is respiratory bronchioles. And it is the bronchioles where we see the major epithelial transition. Single word bronchioles is still this. That's the last structure that has pseudostratified columnar epithelium.
Okay.
Terminal bronchioles is this. Respiratory bronchioles is this. Alveolar ducts are this. Simple cuboidal. And the alveoli is lined with this, but you're gonna have to know this for lecture anyways. This is the type 1 alveolar cell. That's the wall of the alveolus. And that's, we finally covered the whole thing. Again, if you concentrate on the things that are in blue, the principles, and remember that bronchioles is where the epithelium really changes. This is easy.
Okay.
Everybody got it? Okay, again, the reason why these are respiratory bronchioles is because you got single grapes on them. Those are respiratory bronchioles.
What, I thought blue was respiratory bronchial.
Yes, blue is respiratory bronchioles, and the green is the single grapes, alveoli.
Yeah.
That's why they're called respiratory bronchioles. They have
Got it.
alveoli.
Okay. Okay.
What does terminal mean?
Like terminal cisternae?
It means the end. When a patient is terminal, you know, it's about ready to go to room temperature. Trains, train stations, where the track ends, that's called a terminal. Everybody know what terminal means?
Yeah.
Well, look at this up here on the screen. Terminal bronchioles is the one in the middle. Explain that to me.
Is that the end of the gas exchange? Like it's now something else? Like does
Oh,
the,
that's close. That was really close. Okay, there's a couple different ways that physicians divide up the respiratory tract. Have you heard these terms? Upper respiratory tract infection,
yeah,
lower respiratory tract infection.
yes.
The borderline is the larynx. If it's larynx down, it's lower respiratory tract. If it's above the larynx, it's upper respiratory tract. You got an infection in your nose, your nasal cavity, that's an upper respiratory tract infection. Everybody got that?
Mm-hmm.
They also divided between the conducting subdivision, which is only pipes, and then the respiratory subdivision, where you have gas exchange. Everybody got that, or you guys don't care?
Oh, yeah.
The terminal bronchioles are the end of the conducting subdivision. These are just pipes. But the respiratory bronchioles, you have gas exchange. That's the beginning of the respiratory subdivision. Terminal bronchioles are the end of the conducting subdivision because that's where the end where it's just pipes.
Gotcha.
Does now that name make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Does it help when I make the names make sense? Like
Yes.
Yes.
central sulcus on the side of your brain?
Yes, very much.
This is just a posterior of this model showing you the 3 levels of bronchioles. We're almost done.
That's cool.
Okay, so respiratory bronchial in blue, alveoli in green,
Okay.
outlined in yellow is an entire alveolar sac. I don't know if anybody here has tried to draw lines in PowerPoint,
Oh, it's so hard.
but this was a pain in the ass doing this. So you guys are gonna see this. Now, if you think about the alveoli as being grapes, and alveolar sac as being a bunch of grapes, the stems that connect all the grapes is called the alveolar duct. That's in
Blue.
red. And the alveolar duct is simple cuboidal. This is just close up on it. Same color hair as the lights. All right, now we got the last thing is we got to talk about pleura. That's under lungs. Oh, this is on the thing on the bottom of the card. The same color arrows. This little section on that wall chart doesn't have alveolar ducts though. But the same arrows, same lines. Alveoli, they are covered with pulmonary capillaries. Covered. In fact, it's way more intense than what's showing on this model. Way more intense.
Okay.
Everybody got these? All right, let's do the pleura. This is going to take a little bit of plastic interpretation, so pay attention. In yellow, the inner layer is actually stuck on the lungs. So the yellow is visceral pleura. Dark blue are cells that are lining the pleural cavity. Dark blue is parietal pleura. And it doesn't matter in the anterior cavity. Between visceral and parietal pericardium is the pericardial cavity. Between visceral and parietal peritoneum is the peritoneal cavity. And here in light blue, between the visceral and parietal pleura is the pleural cavity. And it has a relatively fixed amount of pleural fluid in it. Everybody got the pleura and the pleural cavity? All three are on the bottom of page 32. Everybody see that? All right. Here's where you want to put little stars. This one already has a star near the top. The mucous membrane is pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Again, sometimes referred to as respiratory epithelium in the respiratory tract. You better be able to identify goblet cells. Like here. In between the green arrows is pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium, but the blue arrows are pointing to goblet cells.
Remember those.
I'm not going to ask olfactory epithelium, I already did that. But you put a star next to trachea. And where it says hyaline cartilage, that is a tracheal cartilage. Respiratory epithelium is pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. You better put a star next to bronchial. And you better put a star next to alveoli. If you missed it the first time, you better put a star next to bronchial. And you better put a star next to alveoli. Everybody got it?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. How much of a break?